Hi, this is Word Solutions to your Binomial expansion quiz. So at the end of the quiz you would have got a score, so you should know which questions you made any errors in. If you know exactly what you're looking for, then feel free to fast forward to the point that you need, have a look through the question and make sure you're getting in touch if you've got any problems. If you feel like you need additional examples in your notes, so for example, if you want an extra note on working with fractions, if you want an extra note on working with higher powers, then feel free to copy this down. Obviously, this video will be here for the rest of the year, so when it comes to revisions, you can always just look back to the video for a refresher if needs be. So starting off at question 1, it wants you to expand and simplify a squared minus 3 to the power of 4. So I'm going to start off by separating out my terms just so that I'm clear on what I'm doing. So I've got a squared as my first term and I've got negative 3 as my second term. Always watch out for the negatives. And 4 is going to be the number that I'm going to keep referring back to. So to start off this question, I'm starting at 4, which is my power. Choose 0. I'm then going to use these two terms and I'm going to follow a pattern. So I've got a squared, starts off at the power of 4, and I've got negative 3, and that's going to be at the power of 0. So your first term starts off with the highest power, which is 4 in this case, and your second term starts off at your lowest power, which is always going to be 0. You're then going to decrease the power on your first term and increase the power on your second term, always aiming to end with a 4. So our next part is going to be 4 choose 1. Like I said, I'm going to decrease the power on this first term, so it's going to decrease to 3, and I'm going to increase this power on the second term, so it's going to increase to 1. Another good check is to make sure that your powers at each step add up to 4. So in this first step I had 4 and 0, they add up to 4. I had 3 and 1, they add up to 4. And that's just a good way to making sure that you've not made any silly mistakes. Keep going, I've then got 4 choose 2. Got a squared to the power of 2. And I've got negative 3 to the power of 2. 2 and 2 add up to 4. I've decreased on my first term and increased on my second term. I've then got 4 choose 3. Continue to decrease on your first term, so decrease to 1. Increase on your second term, so increase to 3. 1 and 3 give me 4. And I'm going to end on 4 choose 4. My final decrease means I end at 0 on my first term, and my final increase means I end at 4 on my second term. That then gives me different sections that I can then start to simplify. So starting off over here, 4 choose 0 is 1. A squared to the power of 4. So this is going to be using your power of power rules from National 5. If you have a power on a power, you multiply them together. So this is going to be a to the power of 8. And then anything to the power of 0 is just 1. You can then move on to the second part. So 4 choose 1 is 4. Again, using your power of powers rules, that's going to give you a to the power of 6. Negative 3 to the power of 1 is just negative 3. Keep going. 4 choose 2 is 6. A squared squared is a to the power of 4. Negative 3 squared. Remember that a negative squared is going to give you a positive, and it will be 9. And then back to 4. I'm timesing by a squared. I've got a negative to an odd power. That's going to give me a negative. 3 cubed, 3 times 3 is 9. Times it by 3 again gives me 27. And then I'm going to end at 1. Times by 1, because anything to the power of 0 is 1. Negative 3 to the power of 4, so a negative to an even power is going to give me a positive. 3 cubed got me to 27, so 3 to the power of 4 must get me to 81. These can then all be further simplified into your final answer. So 1 times a to the power of 8 is just a to the power of 8. We've got a positive 4 and a negative 3, multiply them together gives you negative 12. And a to the power of 6. Plus, next part, I've got 6 and a 9. Multiply them together gives you 54. A to the power of 4. 4 times by negative 27 gives you negative 108. And you've got your a squared. And then you're adding on 81 at the end. So this is your final answer. If we compare it back to what we were originally given, it is the same as question A. So for the first question, your answer is A. Looking at the second question, we've got x minus 2 over x cubed. Some people like to change this to x minus 2x to the minus 1 cubed. That's absolutely fine if you would rather do that. Just make sure you're simplifying your answer at the end to get rid of the negative powers by moving it down and making it a positive power. Doing it this way is also quite nice for when you move on to your general term, which we'll be looking at next week. It'll prepare you for doing that. For just now, I'm going to stick with this one. So x is going to be my first term and negative 2 over x is my second term. 3 is going to be my checkpoint. So I'm starting off, I've got 3, choose 0. First term to the highest power, which is 3. Second term to the lowest power, which is going to be 0. I'm then going to follow my pattern. So I've got 3, choose 1. Decrease the power on the first term. Increase the power on my second term. Sorry, I'm changing that x to a 3 there. Then I'm going to add on 3, choose 2. X to the power of 1. Negative 2 over x to the power of 2. And I'm going to add on 3, choose 3. X to the power of 0 minus 2 over x to the power of 3. I'm just going to run through some checks, make sure that I've definitely got this right. So I started off at 3, choose 0. I've progressed to 3, choose 1, 3, choose 2, 3, choose 3. So I'm quite happy with that. My power on my x's started at 3, decreased to 2, then 1, then 0. On my second term, my negative 2 over x, I started at 0. I've increased to 1, 2, and then 3. And at every step, my powers are adding up to 3. So I'm quite happy that I've got that right. We can now start simplifying. So this first section, 3, choose 0 is 1. X to the power of 3 gives us x cubed. And anything to the power of 0 just gives us 1. We are then adding on 3 times by x squared times by negative 2 over x. Add on 3 times by x times by. So we've got a negative and we're squaring it, so it's going to give us a positive. 2 squared gives us 4 over x squared gives us x squared. And then we're adding on 1 times by 1 because x is to the power of 0. We've now got a negative cubed, which is going to give us a negative. 2 times 2 is 4 times by 2, is 8 over x to the power of 3 gives us x cubed. Now some of you might want to jump to your final answer at this point. I'm going to combine all my answers together and then simplify it. So this x cubed is quite straightforward. From there I've then got 3 times by negative 2 is going to give me negative 6. And I've got an x squared over x. I've then got 3 times 4, which gives me 12. And I've got an x over x squared. And then I've got 8 over x cubed. So this line here isn't necessary. You can skip it and go straight to your final line. But I sometimes quite like putting that in just to make sure that I'm not missing anything out. So I've got x cubed. An x on the bottom and an x on the top can cancel each other out. So I've got minus 6x. I've got x squared on the bottom and an x on the top. So this time I'm going to be left with just 12 on the top and an x on the bottom. And then I've got minus 8 over x cubed. So comparing this back to the answers that I was given, this is the same as question C. So for question 2, your answer was C. A good check for this as well is to make sure you're recognising that your powers decrease at a steady rate. So we've started at x cubed, we've dropped the power down by 2 to x. Remember that this 12 over x is going to be x to the power negative 1, so you've dropped it by another 2, and then you've dropped it by another 2 to get to x to the power negative 3. So just another check to keep in mind. Moving on to the third question, so this is where you're starting to get coefficients. It is getting a little bit trickier at this point, but as long as you're making sure that each of your power involve your entire term, you should be absolutely fine. So my first term is 3x, my second term is negative 2 over x squared. Again, if you want to write that as negative 2x to the minus 2, that is absolutely fine. Do whatever you're most comfortable with, and 4 is going to be my checkpoint throughout. So I'm starting off with 4 choose 0. I've then got 3x to the highest power, which is 4, and negative 2 over x squared to the lowest power, which is 0. And I'm then just going to follow the pattern. So 4 choose 1, 3x to the power of 3, negative 2 over x squared to the power of 1. I'm then going to keep going through 4 choose 2. So decreasing the power on my first term, increasing the power on my second term, and checking that they add up to 4. 2 and 2 gives me 4. So I can keep going. 4 over 3, 3x decrease the power, negative 2 over x squared increase the power, and I'm finishing off at 4 choose 4, 3x to the lowest power, which is 0, and negative 2 over x squared to the highest power, which is 4. We can then start to simplify. So 4 choose 0 is 1. You've then got 3 to the power of 4, which is 81, times by x to the power of 4. That's probably one of the most common mistakes in there, rewriting that as 3x to the power of 4. Remember, that would be 3 to the power of 4 and x to the power of 4. Negative 2 over x squared to the power of 0 is just 1. Then got 4 choose 1 is 4. We've then got 3 cubed, which is 27, times by x cubed, and that's getting times by negative 2 over x squared. Then keep going. 4 choose 2 is 6, 3 squared is 9, x to the power of 2 is x squared, and we're timesing it by, so a negative square will give us a positive. 2 times 2 is 4 over x squared squared, powers of powers again, so multiply them, x to the power of 4. 4 choose 3 is 4, and we're just timesing by 3x. Negative cubed is going to give us a negative. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, over powers of powers gives us x to the power of 6, plus 1 times by 1, because it's to the power of 0. We've got an even power on a negative number, that's going to give us a positive. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16, and again, powers of powers. I'm going to simplify this line before I come up with my final answer. Again, this line here isn't compulsory, you don't have to do this, it's just quite useful to have in there if you're more of a visual person, if you need to see it rather than doing it in your head. So I've got 81x to the power of 4. I've then got a negative in here, so it's going to be negative 2 times 4 times 27 gives us 216, and it's an x cubed over an x squared. I'll simplify that in the next line. I've then got 6 times 9 times 4, which gives me 216 again, x squared over x to the power of 4. I've got a negative in there, so it's going to be minus 96x over x to the power of 6, and then plus my 16 over x to the 8. So again, you don't need that line in there, that's just if you would rather deal with these x's and simplifying them by writing them down. Some of you might just be able to go straight to this final line. So simplifying, I've got 1x to the power of 4 minus, so I've got an x squared on the bottom and an x cubed on the top. It's going to leave me with just 216x on the top. I've then got an x squared on the top and an x to the power of 4 on the bottom, so that's going to leave me with an x squared on the bottom, minus 96, my x and my x6 leave me with x to the power of 5, and then plus 16 over x to the power of 8. Remember, a good way to check again is that your powers are decreasing by the same amount each time. So I've got x to the power of 4 is then decreased by 3 to x. That's then decreased by 3 to x squared on the bottom, which would be x to the negative 2. X squared on the bottom then goes down to x to the power of 5, and it then goes down to x to the power of 8. Remember that the reason I'm saying it goes down to is because if they were on the top, it would be x to the negative 2, x to the negative 5, and x to the negative 8. Either way, you can see that it's the same increments each time that they're going by. So looking up to our possible answers at the top, this is the same as this one here. So for your third question, your answer should have been B. Final question, lots of fractions in this and our biggest power at this point. So we're going to start off the same way. First part is x squared over 3, so that's our first term. Second term is negative 2 over x, and 5 is going to be your checkpoint. Okay, so fifth row of Pascal's triangle. If you can't remember them, make sure you're using the tip that Mrs. Bridges had mentioned in the team call. So I know that I've got 1, 4, 6, 4, 1 for my fourth line. Beyond that, you don't actually have to memorise anything. You can just use this little trick. So it's going to start off at 1. 1 and 4 gives me 5. 4 and 6 gives me 10. 6 and 4 gives me 10. 4 and 1 gives me 5. And it ends at 1. So this is what we're using. This is the expansion that we're going to use when we're considering a power of 5. So I'm going to start off 5, choose 0. My first term is x squared over 3. That's going to be to my highest power, which is 5. My second term is negative 2 over x, and that's going to be to my lowest power, which is 0. And I'm then going to follow my pattern. 5, choose 1. X squared over 3. Decrease that power, and then increase the power on my second term. 5, choose 2. X squared over 3 to the power of 3. Negative 2 over x to the power of 2. That power of 3 and power of 2 give me 5, so I've not made any silly mistakes. 5, choose 3. X squared over 3. 2 and 3 for my powers this time give me 5. 5, choose 4. X squared over 3. I'm almost there because I'm down to 1 at this point, and that must be a power of 4. And I'm ending at 5, choose 5. X squared over 3 to the power of 0, which is my smallest power. Negative 2 over 8 to the power of x, to the power of 5. And that's me finished at that point there. I can then start to simplify. So referring back up to this line here, this is my expansion for all my choose terms. So I've got 1 times by, starting off, I've got x squared to the power of 5 gives us x to the 10. Powers of powers means that we multiply them. And 3 to the power of 5 gives me 243. Anything to the power of 0 is just 1. I've then got 5 times by, so powers of powers again, I'm going to have x to the power of 8 over 81 times by negative 2 over x plus, next one, 5 choose 2 is 10, and I'm going to times that by x to the 6 over 3 cubed, timesing it by, so a negative squared is going to give me a positive, 2 squared is 4 over x squared plus 10, x squared squared gives me x to the power of 4, 3 squared gives me 9, and I'm timesing it by, so a negative number to an odd power is going to give me a negative. 2 cubed is going to be 8 over x cubed, almost there. I've then got plus 5 times by x squared over 3 times by, this time it's going to be a positive because it's an even power. 2 times 2 is 4, times 2 is 8, times 2 is 16 over x to the power of 4. And my last part, 5 choose 5 is 1, anything to the power of 0 is 1. And then I've got negative 32 over x to the power of 5. Okay, so from there, I'm going to skip my extra line that I would usually do. The only reason that I'm doing that is because I have quickly ran out of space. Just so that I'm being very, very cautious with what I'm doing, I'm going to start off by maybe eliminating some things. So for example, this last part here is negative 32 over x to the power of 5. So C is not a possible answer because of that end term. And my second C, which should be D, is not a possible answer either. I'm then trying to decide between these two parts here. So I'm going to look for a difference between them. I have got a negative 10x to the power of 7 over 81, and I've got a negative 2x to the power of 7 over 81. So if I start to simplify, I'm going to keep that second term in mind. The x to the power of 10 over 243. That works out fine. 5 times by 2 gives me negative 10x to the power of 7 over 81. So that means that I can eliminate B. So my answer is going to be A, but obviously we would never leave this unfinished. We would keep going. But I'm going to keep referring back to that one just to make sure that I'm simplifying these x terms correctly. So my next part, I've got 10 times 4 is 40. It's going to be over 27. I've got an x6 over x squared, so that's going to give me an x4 on the top. I've then got minus 80. I've got more x's on the top than the bottom, so that's going to simplify to give me an x on the top, a 9 on the bottom. And then over towards the end, I've got 5 times by 16, which is going to give me 80. I've now got more x's on the bottom than the top, so my x's are still going to appear on the bottom. So I've got 3x squared, and then the minus 32 over x to the power of 5 that we used to eliminate the two c's. So this is my final answer, and that's exactly what we got for A. So for question 4, your final answer was A. If you've still got any problems with any of the questions, then just send us an email, let us know how we can help.